A billionaire's son was dying, dangerous, slow, and invisible, a rare blood disease eating him from the inside. Only one blood type could save him, AB negative, less than 1% of the population, and month after month, one woman showed up regularly. She rolled up her sleeve, gave her blood, then went back to work mopping floors in the same hospital, 3 floors below the child she was keeping alive. She had no idea whose veins her blood was flowing through. And he, a man worth billions, a man who built an empire on saving children's lives with technology, had no idea that the only thing keeping his son breathing was a woman he walked past every single day without seeing. Then one night he found out. He found out everything. And the woman who had been saving his child for a long time was right there, on her knees, scrubbing someone else's blood off the hospital floor. What he did next would either change her life forever or prove that gratitude from the powerful always comes with a price. Amina had just finished a long night shift. Her feet ached in shoes that had been worn past the point of replacement months ago. Her hands were dry and cracked from hospital-grade disinfectant, the kind that kills everything on your skin, including the skin itself. Her scrubs had faded from navy to something closer to gray. She smelled like bleach and floor wax and other people's pain. She should have gone home, should have crawled into bed in her small apartment, and slept until her next shift started. But instead, Amina turned left at the lobby, past the cafeteria, past the gift shop, down the hallway most people in this hospital did not even know existed. She walked into the blood bank. The nurse at the desk looked up and smiled. She knew Amina by now. Back again regularly, like clockwork, Amina sat down in the donation chair the way most people sit down at a coffee shop. Casual, routine, like giving away a piece of yourself was just another day. The nurse tied the rubber band around Amina's arm and tapped for a vein. You know, she said while prepping the needle, your blood type is something special. AB negative. Less than 1% of people have it. We are always short on it. Always. There is maybe a handful of regular donors in the whole city with your type, and most of them do not show up as consistently as you do. Amina watched the needle slide in. She watched her blood, dark and warm, begin filling the bag. She did not flinch. She never did. Do you ever wonder who gets it? The nurse asked. Your blood. I mean, we cannot tell you, obviously. Donor anonymity. Once it leaves here, it gets processed, typed, cross-matched, and sent wherever it is needed. You will never know whose body it ends up in, and they will never know it came from you. Amina shook her head. I do not need to know. My mother used to say something back home. She said blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. She said that phrase the way some people say prayers. Not dramatic, not trying to be deep, just stating something she believed down to her bones. The nurse finished the draw, labeled the bag, placed it in the cooler alongside the others. Amina's blood would be tested, processed, and delivered to a patient within days. That was the system, anonymous, efficient, invisible. One person gives, another person receives, and neither one ever knows the other exists. Amina pressed the cotton ball against the inside of her elbow, held it there. She sat in the recovery chair for the required time, drank her juice, ate her cookie, and then she stood up, put her warm jacket back on, and walked out of the blood bank the same way she had walked in, quietly, without anyone watching. She did not know whose veins her blood would flow through. She did not need to know. But if she had known, everything about her life would have been different. Stay with me, because the child receiving Amina's blood right now is someone whose name you will recognize. Amina worked the night shift at St. Jude Children's Memorial. She worked long hours, 5 nights a week, sometimes more when she needed the overtime, which was most weeks. Her official title was Certified Nursing Assistant, CNA, the lowest rung on the hospital ladder. She made little more than minimum wage after taxes. In Chicago, where rent for a one-bedroom in a safe neighborhood costs more than that. Her job was simple, at least on paper. Change bed linens, empty bedpans, wipe down surfaces, take vital signs, help patients eat, help them to the bathroom, help them do the things that sickness stole from them. A CNA is the person who touches patients the most and gets paid the least. Doctors see patients for minutes. Nurses see them for segments of their shift. But CNAs live in those rooms. They are the ones who hear the crying in the dark, the ones who hold a child's hand when the parents have gone home to sleep, the ones who notice when something changes in a patient's breathing before any monitor picks it up. And they are invisible. Not metaphorically, literally invisible. Doctors walked past Amina every single night like she was furniture. Nurses gave her instructions without looking up from their charts. Patients' families sometimes spoke about her while she was standing right there, as if she could not hear them. She was background noise, a body that mopped and lifted and wiped so that the important people could do their important work. Her supervisor, Derek Lang, made sure she knew her place. Derek ran the night custodial and CNA operations with the energy of a man who believed efficiency was a religion and compassion was a waste of billable minutes. You are a CNA, Amina, not a therapist. Clean the room and move on. He had said that to her when he caught her sitting with a young child who could not sleep. The child had been crying. Amina had been telling her a story about a bird that flew across the ocean. Derek had written her up. You have many rooms to turn over tonight, he had said, not looking at her. I do not care if the kid is crying. That is what nurses are for. You are here to clean. Do your job, or I will find someone who will. Amina had not argued. She had learned a long time ago that arguing with people who had power over your paycheck was a luxury she could not afford. Not when her mother needed her. Gloria Assay was getting older and she was dying slowly. Chronic kidney disease, advanced stage. She needed dialysis regularly, even with insurance, which Amina had barely managed to get through the hospital. The out-of-pocket costs were crushing. Co-pays, medications, transportation to the dialysis center, the special diet Gloria needed but could not always afford. It added up to a heavy burden every month. Money Amina did not have. Money she made anyway. Somehow, by picking up every extra shift, by eating one meal a day, by wearing shoes until the solace came apart. She never told anyone at work about her mother, never complained, never asked for help. She just showed up, did her job, gave her blood regularly, and went home. Every morning after her shift, Amina walked out of the hospital and headed for the bus stop to Blocks East. And every morning she passed the same billboard on Michigan Avenue, a massive ad for a company called Vitalex AI. The tagline read, "Saving children's lives with the power of AI." Beneath it, a smiling child. Beneath that, a logo worth billions. Amina walked past that billboard every single day without a second glance. She did not know who owned Vitalex AI. She did not know that the company's founder had a son in the very hospital she had just left. And she certainly did not know that the child on the 7th floor, the one hooked up to blood transfusion bags regularly, was alive because of what flowed out of her veins every month. She just walked, head down, jacket pulled tight. Another invisible woman heading home in a city that had never once asked her name. 3 floors above, where Amina gave her blood regularly, a different world existed. A world that smelled like fresh flowers instead of disinfectant. A world where the hospital rooms had leather recliners and imported Italian linen and a view of Lake Michigan that most Chicagoans would never see from that angle. This was the VIP pediatric wing, and in room 714, a young boy named Kai Fairfax was watching cartoons while a bag of dark red blood dripped slowly into his tiny arm. His father sat beside him, Bennett Fairfax, founder and CEO of Vitalix AI, a company valued at billions that used artificial intelligence to diagnose rare diseases in children across many countries. Bennett's face had been on the cover of Forbes more than once. He had spoken at Davos. He had shaken hands with presidents. His technology had identified early-stage leukemia in thousands of children who would have otherwise been diagnosed too late. And his own son was dying. Had autoimmune hemolytic anemia, IHA, a condition where the body turns against itself. The immune system, which is supposed to protect you, starts attacking your own red blood cells, destroying them, eating them alive from the inside. Without regular blood transfusions, Kai's body could not carry enough oxygen. His organs would start to fail, slowly at first, then all at once. The transfusions were the only thing keeping him alive. One bag of OV-negative blood regularly, matched to his exact type. Without it, his hemoglobin would drop to dangerous levels within weeks. Bennett watched the blood drip, watched it enter his son's arm, watched the color slowly return to Kai's face. And he felt the same thing he felt every single time in this room: rage. Not at anyone, not at anything he could fight. Just rage at the universe for giving him the power to save other people's children, but not his own. Dr. Aisha Nkosi walked in. She was the head of pediatric hematology, South African, brilliant, calm in the way that only doctors who have seen the worst can be calm. "How is he responding today?" Bennett asked without looking away from the foredrip. "Well, his numbers should stabilize soon, the same as last time." Dr. Nkosi checked the monitors, adjusted a setting, made a note in her chart. Bennett leaned forward. "How is it possible that I can fund a company that diagnoses diseases in so many countries, but I cannot find a reliable blood donor for my own son?" Dr. Nkosi looked at him, not with pity, with patience. "Because blood does not care about net worth, Mr. Fairfax. It only cares about compatibility. AB negative is the rarest type. Less than 1% of the population. We cannot manufacture it. We cannot synthesize it. And we cannot force people to donate it. All we can do is hope that the right person shows up." Bennett stared at the blood bag. Someone else's blood, a stranger's blood, the only thing between his son and a slow death. And he did not even know who it belonged to. "Who donates this?" he asked. "Is it the same person every time?" "Doctor?" Dr. Nkosi paused. "Donor information is confidential, Mr. Fairfax. You know that. The blood bank operates on strict anonymity. It protects the donor from outside pressure, and it protects the integrity of the system. I am not asking to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure they keep coming back. I want to know that my son's life does not depend on some anonymous stranger deciding to show up." Dr. Nkosi set down her chart. "I understand your concern, and I can tell you this much, not as his doctor, but as someone who has access to the donation records. Your son's primary donor has been consistent for a long time, the same person, every month, without fail, without being asked, without knowing whose blood they are giving or why." Bennett's jaw tightened. Someone had been saving his son's life for a long time, and he did not even know their name, did not know if they were a man or a woman, did not know if they were rich or poor, or young or old, did not know anything. "And I cannot know who they are." "No, you cannot." Dr. Nkosi turned back to her computer. On the screen, a file, a donor profile, a name she recognized because she saw it regularly when the blood bank processed the donation. She looked at the name, then she closed the file. "She will be back next month." "She always comes back." Bennett did not catch the pronoun. He did not notice that Dr. Nkosi had just slipped. He was too focused on his son, too focused on the blood bag, to focus on the terrible, humbling reality that all his money, all his technology, all his power could not do what one anonymous stranger was doing for free. If you are already invested in this story, subscribe now and turn on notifications because what is about to happen between Amina and the boy in room 714 will break your heart in the best way possible. Late one night, the seventh floor was quiet, the way hospitals get quiet after midnight. Not silent, never silent. There is always the hum of machines, the soft beep of monitors, the distant sound of someone's TV left onto low to hear the words, but loud enough to know it is there. Amina pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, room by room, wipe, mop, check the trash, restock the hand sanitizer, move on. She had done this 1,000 times. She could do it with her eyes closed. Room 714 was next on her list. The VIP room. She knocked softly. No answer. She pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the heart monitor and a small nightlight shaped like a rocket ship. In the bed, a small boy sat up right against two pillows, wide awake, eyes big and dark and frightened. Hey there. Amina kept her voice low. You okay, sweetheart? The boy looked at her, studied her face. He was tiny for his age, thin in the way sick children are thin, not from hunger, but from the disease that was slowly stealing his body's ability to make the blood it needed. I cannot sleep, he whispered. It is too dark and the beeping is scary. Amina looked at the door. She had many more rooms to clean that night. Derek would check her progress soon. She was already behind schedule. She should have moved on. Instead, she parked her cart in the hallway, walked back into the room, and sat down in the chair next to his bed. What is your name? She asked. Kai. Well, Kai, I am Amina and I will tell you what. How about I stay for a few minutes, just until you feel sleepy? Would that be okay? He nodded, small, grateful. Amina told him about the ocean in Ghana, about how the waves sound different there than they do in Lake Michigan, about the fishermen who go up before sunrise and come back with nets full of silver, about her grandmother who used to say the ocean remembers every person who has ever been kind to it. Kai listened. His eyes got heavy, but before he fell asleep, he reached under his pillow and pulled out a piece of paper, a drawing, crayon on printer paper, the kind of art only a young child can make. This is the blood lady, he said, holding it up for Amina to see. She looked at it, a stick figure, brown skin, big hands holding a red heart. The blood lady, Amina asked. She comes every month. Kai pointed to the 4-pole next to his bed, where the empty blood bag from his last transfusion still hung. I do not know who she is, but my daddy says someone gives me their blood so I can be strong. I call her the blood lady. She makes me feel better. Amina felt something shift in her chest, something warm, something painful. Do you think the blood lady knows she is saving me? Kai asked, his voice getting softer as sleep pulled him closer. Amina looked at this child, this tiny, brave boy with his crayon drawings, and his rocket ship night light, and his body that was fighting a war it could not win alone. I am sure she does, sweetheart, and I am sure she is happy to do it. Kai smiled, closed his eyes. Within a minute, he was asleep. Amina sat there for a moment longer, looking at the drawing, looking at the empty blood bag. She did not connect them. How could she? She had no reason to. She was just a CNA who cleaned rooms and gave blood separately in different parts of the same building, never knowing that those two acts were part of the same story. She tucked the blanket around Kai's shoulders, set the drawing on his bedside table, and quietly pushed her cart back into the hallway. Amina had no idea that the child she was tucking in was the same child she had been saving for a long time, and she had no idea that soon the truth would come out in the worst possible way. Amina Say came to America when she was young. She came with a full scholarship to study pre-med at the University of Illinois Chicago. She came with a suitcase that weighed more than she did, to textbooks she had already read cover to cover, and a dream so big it barely fit inside her chest. She was going to be a doctor. Back in Accra, that dream had been everything. Her mother, Gloria, had worked 3 jobs to get Amina through secondary school, sold fabric at the market in the morning, cleaned offices in the afternoon, took in laundry at night. Also her daughter could study. Also her daughter could become the thing Gloria never had a chance to be. The day Amina got her scholarship letter, Gloria held it with both hands and cried. Not sad tears, the kind of tears that come when something you have been praying for your whole life finally shows up on paper. You are going to heal people, Gloria had told her. That is what you were made to do. And Amina believed it. She believed it through her first year of college when the coursework was brutal and the loneliness was worse. She believed it through her second year when she made the dean's list both semesters and her organic chemistry professor told her she had the best hands in the lab. She believed it through the first half of her third year when she started clinical rotations and felt for the first time like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Then her mother called. Gloria's kidneys were failing, both of them, advanced chronic kidney disease moving fast. She needed dialysis. She needed medication. She needed treatment that cost more money than she had made in a decade. Amina had done the math. She had done it over and over sitting on the floor of her dorm room with a calculator and a stack of bills. Dialysis in the United States costs an average of tens of thousands a year. Insurance covers some of it if you have insurance, which Gloria did not. Not yet. There are co-pays. There are medications that cost hundreds a bottle. There are transportation costs and dietary requirements and the thousand small expenses that pile up around a chronic illness like snow around a buried car. Amina could not afford tuition and her mother's treatment. She could afford one, not both, and that was never really a choice at all. She dropped out near the end of her studies, just semesters away from finishing, semesters away from medical school applications, semesters away from becoming Dr. Amina Say. Instead, she became a CNA because it was the fastest certification she could get, because hospitals were always hiring, because the pay was enough to cover Gloria's co-pays if Amina never spent money on anything else, and because it kept her inside a hospital, even if she was not a doctor, even if she would never be one now, she was still there, still in the building where healing happened, still close enough to touch it even if she could not practice it. Some people would have been bitter. Some people would have spent every shift mourning the career they lost. Amina did not. Not because she did not feel the loss. She felt it every single day. She felt it every time a doctor gave an order she could have given. Every time she changed a bedpan knowing she could have read the chart instead. Every time she stood in an elevator next to residents who were younger than her wearing white coats she should have been wearing. But her mother had taught her something a long time ago that kept the bitterness from taking root. When Amina was young, Gloria had taken her to a blood drive at the community center in Accra. It was Amina's first time donating. She was nervous, scared of the needle, scared of the blood. Gloria had held her hand and said something Amina would carry with her for the rest of her life. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. Amina had been donating ever since. In Accra, in Chicago, in every city she had ever passed through. Not because anyone asked, not because she got paid, but because she had of negative blood and she knew what that meant. It meant she was rare. It meant her blood was always needed. And it meant that every time she sat in that chair and opened her vein, someone somewhere would live who might not have lived otherwise. She did not know who. She did not need to know. That was the point. Giving was not about recognition. It was about responsibility. If you had something rare, something life-saving, something that cost you nothing but an hour and a little dizziness, then keeping it to yourself was not just selfish. It was wrong. Her mother had taught her that, and Amina believed it the way she believed in breathing. So she worked her shifts. She cleaned her rooms. She held children's hands in the dark. She paid her mother's medical bills. And regularly, she gave her blood away for free to strangers she would never meet. Amina had given up medical school, but she had never given up medicine. She practiced it every night in every room she cleaned, with every patient she comforted, and every month with every pint of blood she gave away for free. This story is about to take a turn that will change everything. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you do not miss what happens next. One afternoon on the 7th floor of St. Jude Children's Memorial, something was going very wrong. Kai Fairfax had been fine that morning. He had eaten breakfast. He had drawn pictures. He had asked his father when he could go home, the same question he asked every day, and Bennett had given the same answer he always gave. Soon, buddy. Soon. But soon after, Kai's skin had turned the color of old paper. His eyes, usually bright and restless, had gone dull. His breathing was shallow, fast, wrong. Dr. Nkosi was paged. By the time she reached the room reading his blood panel, her face told Bennett everything he needed to know before she said a single word. He is in hemolytic crisis, Dr. Nkosi said. His body is destroying red blood cells faster than we have ever seen. His hemoglobin is dropping dangerously. What does that mean? Bennett asked, even though some part of him already knew. It means his organs are not getting enough oxygen. If we do not get his hemoglobin up soon, we are looking at organ failure, starting with his kidneys, then his heart. Bennett gripped the bedrail. His knuckles went white. Then transfuse him. Do it now. We do not have the blood. Mr. Fairfax. Those 5 words landed like a physical blow. What do you mean you do not have the blood? OV negative is the rarest blood type in the country. Less than 1% of Americans carry it. The national blood supply is critically low right now, especially for rare types. We have contacted every regional blood bank nearby. Nobody has OV negative in stock. Nobody? Bennett stared at her. This is a major hospital. You are telling me you cannot find a bag of blood. I am telling you that money cannot create blood that does not exist, Dr. Nkosi said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. We have exactly 0 units of OV negative on hand. The only reliable donor we have had for a long time. She stopped. She did not finish the sentence. What a Bennett pressed. The only donor what? Dr. Nkosi looked at him, looked at Kai, looked at the monitor that showed his son's hemoglobin dropping in real time. I will make some calls, she said quietly, and left the room. What Dr. Nkosi almost said would have changed everything, but she held her tongue, and that silence nearly cost Kai his life. Later, that evening Amina heard about it. She was on the 3rd floor restocking supply closets when 2 nurses came around the corner talking in the urgent clipped tones that hospital staff use when something is going badly. Pediatric VIP on 7. Young boy in hemolytic crisis. They need OV negative and nobody has it. They have been calling blood banks all day. Nothing. The other nurse shook her head. That poor kid. If they do not find a match soon, they are talking about emergency exchange transfusion. And even that is a long shot without the right type. They turned the corner and were gone. They had not noticed Amina standing there with an armful of bed sheets. AB negative. Amina set the sheets down slowly. Her heart was beating in a way it had not beaten in a long time. Not fast, not panicked, but loud, deep. The way it beat when she knew something with absolute certainty. She had of negative blood. She had donated recently. The guidelines say you need to wait a full interval between donations. She was inside that window. Donating now would be early. Too early. Her iron levels might not have recovered. She could get dizzy. She could faint. In rare cases, donating too frequently can cause serious anemia, the kind that puts the donor in a hospital bed. Amina knew all of this. She had been donating long enough to know the rules by heart. She also knew that somewhere above her, a child was dying because nobody in this entire city had what she had. She walked to the blood bank, pushed open the door. The same nurse who always drew her blood looked up surprised. Amina, you are not due for another while. I know. I am here because I heard you need of negative. I have it. Take mine. The nurse shook her head. I cannot. You donated recently. Your hemoglobin might not be high enough. If I draw you now and your levels crash, I am putting you at risk. There are protocols. I know the rules, Amina said, and her voice was calm, steady. The voice of a woman who had made her decision before she walked through the door. I also know that somewhere in this hospital, a child is dying because nobody has what I have. So, take my blood. I will deal with the consequences. The nurse hesitated, looked at her screen, looked at Amina. Then she paged Dr. Nkosi. Dr. Nkosi arrived minutes later. She looked at Amina and something shifted behind her eyes. Something heavy. Something she could not say because Dr. Nkosi knew. She knew exactly where this blood was going. She knew the name of the child. She knew the name of the father. And she knew that the woman standing in front of her in faded scrubs and worn shoes, offering her own blood at the cost of her own health, had been keeping that child alive for a long time without ever being told. She wanted to say it. She wanted to tell Amina everything. She wanted to say, the boy you are saving is the same boy you told bedtime stories to recently. The same boy who drew you a picture and called you the story lady. His father is worth billions, and he has no idea you exist. But the rules existed for a reason. Donor anonymity protected people like Amina from being pressured, manipulated, or exploited. And Dr. Nkosi had sworn an oath to uphold those rules even when every cell in her body screamed at her to break them. You understand the risks? Dr. Nkosi asked. I understand them. And you want to proceed. I need to proceed. There is a difference. Dr. Nkosi looked at her for a long moment, then she nodded, drew her a chair. The needle went in. Amina's blood, dark and warm and full of the antibodies that matched only one tiny boy 3 floors above her, began filling the bag. She closed her eyes, felt the familiar pull, the slight lightheadedness that always came when she gave too soon, too much, too often. She did not care. Her mother's words moved through her like a heartbeat. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. 3 floors below room 714, Amina sat in a donation chair with her eyes closed and her arm extended, giving away the thing her body needed most. 3 floors above her, the blood bank called up to pediatrics. 1 unit of OV negative, fresh, available, ready. Dr. Nkosi carried the bag herself. She did not trust a courier with this one. She walked it up the stairs because the elevator was too slow. She walked into room 714, where Bennett Fairfax sat beside his son, holding the boy's small hand, his face gray with the kind of fear that money cannot fix. She hung the bag, connected the line, started the drip. Bennett watched the blood enter his son's arm, dark red, warm, somebody else's life flowing into his child. He did not know whose. He just watched. Kai's breathing slowed first, not in a bad way, in the way that happens when a body finally gets what it needs. His color started to shift. the waxy gray fading to something warmer, something alive. His fingers, which had been cold to the touch for hours, began to warm. Bennett pressed his forehead against his son's hand. He did not speak. He could not. The relief was so enormous, it had taken his language away. 3 floors below, Amina was lying in the recovery chair. The room was spinning slightly. Her arms felt heavy. The nurse had given her juice and crackers and strict instructions not to move for a while. She was dizzy, tired. Her body was telling her she had given too much too soon. She lay there in the quiet of the blood bank, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigeration units that held the donations. She did not know that her blood was at that very moment pulling a young boy back from the edge. She did not know that the boy's father was crying 3 floors above her head. She did not know that the drawing of the blood lady was sitting on Kai's bedside table right next to the four-pull that held the bag with her name on it. She did not know any of it. She just lay there, dizzy and tired, and quietly certain that she had done the right thing. To people in the same building connected by blood, separated by 3 floors, and a wall of anonymity that was about to crack. The next morning, Bennett Fairfax was in Dr. Nkosi's office before she had even finished her coffee. "I need to know who the donor is," he said it like a man who was used to getting answers, like a man who signed checks that built hospital wings, like a man who had never been told no by anyone who wanted to keep their funding. Dr. Nkosi set her cup down. She did not flinch. "You know I cannot do that, Mr. Fairfax. My son almost died last night. He almost died because we ran out of blood. And you are telling me there is one person, one single person in this entire city who has been keeping him alive for a long time, and I am not allowed to know their name. That is exactly what I am telling you." Bennett stood up, paced to the window, paced back. He was a man who solved problems for a living, who built systems, who fixed things. And right now, the thing he needed to fix was the gap between his son's survival and a name he was not allowed to hear. "There are laws around this," Dr. Nkosi continued. "Donor anonymity is not a suggestion. It is a federal protection. It exists because without it, donors get pressured. They get harassed. They get guilt-tripped into giving more than their bodies can safely handle. The system works because donors trust that their privacy will be respected. If we break that trust, donors stop coming. And if donors stop coming, children like Kai die." Bennett turned to face her. "I am not going to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure they are taken care of. I want to guarantee that my son has a reliable source of blood going forward. And I understand that," Dr. Nkosi said. "But what you want does not override what they are entitled to. This person chose to donate anonymously. That means they chose not to be found. And respecting that choice is not optional. Not for you. Not for me. Not for anyone." Bennett's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, turned the screen toward Dr. Nkosi. "Millions right now. Transfer to this hospital's general fund. All I need is a name." Dr. Nkosi looked at the screen, looked at the number. Then she looked at Bennett with an expression that made something shift inside his chest. "And if I sell that name for millions, what does that make me? What does that make this hospital? A place where privacy is for sale, where the wealthy can buy access to anyone's personal information as long as the check clears." She stood up. "Mr. Fairfax, I am deeply sympathetic to what you are going through. Your son is my patient and I care about him, but I will not sell a donor's identity. Not for millions. Not for any amount. The day this hospital puts a price tag on someone's right to privacy is the day we stop being a hospital and start being a marketplace." Bennett put his phone away. His hands were shaking, not from anger, from something worse, from the realization that for the first time in his adult life, There was something his money genuinely could not buy. He left without another word. Bennett could not buy the answer, but he was about to stumble into it in a way that would shatter every assumption he had ever made about who saves lives and who deserves to be saved. The same week Bennett was trying to buy a name. Amina was sitting in a different doctor's office getting news that would break her. Her mother's nephrologist was a kind man with tired eyes who delivered bad news the way all good doctors do. Gently, but without false hope. Gloria's kidneys were done, both of them, end-stage renal disease. Dialysis was no longer enough. She needed a transplant. Without one, the doctor said she had limited time. Amina sat in the plastic chair and listened and did not cry. Not yet. She saved that for later. The numbers hit her like a wall. A kidney transplant costs hundreds of thousands. Insurance would cover a portion, but Gloria's coverage had gaps, big ones. After everything was calculated, co-pays, medications, post-surgical care, rehabilitation, Amina was looking at a large amount out of pocket. She made little more than minimum wage. She had limited savings. She did not have a credit card. She did not own property. She had nothing to borrow against and no one to borrow from. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with a calculator and a legal pad and tried to make the math work. She could pick up more shifts. She could work every day. She could stop eating lunch. She could do all of those things and still not have enough. And then another thought crept in, a quieter one, a colder one. She could stop donating blood. Not permanently, just for now. Her body was still recovering from the recent donation. She had been tired for weeks, dizzy sometimes. Her iron was low. The blood bank nurse had told her to take it easy, eat more red meat, wait the full interval before coming back. If she kept pushing herself, kept donating on top of working double shifts, her own health would collapse. And if she collapsed, there would be nobody to take care of Gloria. But if she stopped donating, somewhere in this hospital, a child with of negative blood would have one less option, one less chance, one less month of guaranteed survival. She was choosing between her mother's life and a stranger's child. Amina drove to the dialysis center the next morning. Gloria was in her chair, hooked up to the machine that cleaned her blood regularly because her kidneys no longer could. She looked smaller than she had recently, thinner, more fragile. Amina told her about the transplant, about the cost, about the impossible math. She did not tell her mother about the blood, but Gloria knew. Mothers always know. You are thinking about stopping, are you not? Amina looked away. Mama, I need to focus on you right now. Do not you dare stop giving blood because of me. Amina. Gloria's voice was weak, but the words had iron in them. The day you stop giving is the day you stop being who you are. But Mama, I cannot lose you. You will not lose me. Gloria reached out and took Amina's hand. Her grip was fragile, but her eyes were fierce. But do not save me by letting someone else's child die. That is not who I raised. That is not who you are. Amina held her mother's hand, held it tight, and did not say anything because there was nothing to say that would not be a lie. That night in the hospital parking lot, Amina sat in her car. The engine was off. The windows were fogged. She had just finished a long shift, and she was so tired her bones ached. She cried, not the pretty kind of crying, the ugly kind. The kind where your whole body shakes and you cannot breathe and you press your face into the steering wheel and you make sounds that do not belong in a language. She cried because she was broke and her mother was dying and she was exhausted and nobody in the world knew her name. She cried because she had given away her blood many times and never once been thanked. And she did not want to be thanked, but she also did not want to be invisible anymore. And she hated herself for wanting that, because wanting recognition for kindness felt like it made the kindness less real. She cried in the dark in an empty parking lot, and nobody saw her. Nobody ever saw her. One afternoon, Bennett Fairfax's world broke open. He had come to the hospital unannounced, could not sleep, could not stop thinking about the hemolytic crisis, could not stop hearing Dr. Nkosi's voice saying, "We do not have the blood." So he had driven to St. Jude in the middle of the night to sit with Kai, to watch him breathe, to count the rises and falls of his small chest, and convince himself his son was still alive. He was walking from the elevator toward the VIP wing when he passed the blood bank. The door was ajar. The hallway was empty, and two nurses inside were talking. He would not have stopped. He would not have listened. But one of them said a name that caught his ear. "Amina is back again. She has come in to check on the schedule. Wants to make sure she is set for her next donation." The other nurse laughed softly. "That woman is something else. She is the only of negative regular we have got. Has been for a long time. Shows up like clockwork. Never misses. Even came in early when we had that emergency." Bennett stopped walking. "She is the reason that Fairfax kid is still here. You know, would have died without her. Donation after donation, all anonymous. She has never once asked who it goes to." Bennett stood in that hallway like a man who had been hit by something he could not see. His feet would not move. His heart was beating so loud he was sure the nurses could hear it. Amina, of negative, regular donations. The Fairfax kid, his son's blood, his son's life. A woman named Amina, a CNA. Bennett's mind started racing. He knew that name, not personally, not the way you know someone you have spoken to, but the way you know a word you have seen many times without reading it. Amina, the name on a badge he had glanced at and forgotten. The face he had passed in hallways without registering. The woman with the cleaning cart who was always there and never visible. He walked away from the blood bank, slowly, quietly. His hands were trembling. He turned a corner, then another, following the sound of machinery, the distant squeak of wheels on tile, until he reached the third-floor east corridor. And there she was. Amina was on her knees on the floor cleaning. A patient in one of the rooms had had a nosebleed, a bad one, and there was blood on the linoleum, and Amina was on her hands and knees scrubbing it out with a rag and a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Bennett stood at the end of the hallway and watched her. He watched her hands. The blue nitrile gloves stretched tight over fingers that were already cracked beneath them. Her knees on the wet floor, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her scrubs faded from navy to something that did not have a color anymore. She was focused entirely on the stain, moving methodically, carefully, the way someone works when they take pride in even the smallest task. She did not know he was there, and Bennett realized standing in that empty hallway that he had walked past this woman many times. Many times. He had walked past her in the lobby, in the elevator, in the hallway outside his son's room. He had looked through her the way you look through glass. She was background. She was furniture. She was nobody, and she was the reason his son was alive. He thought about what he had said to Dr. Nkosi. Millions for a name. And here was the name. Here was the person on her knees scrubbing blood off a hospital floor for little pay. And she had been giving away her own blood for free regularly for a long time to keep his child breathing. Bennett Fairfax had built a company worth billions on the promise of saving children's lives. His face had been on magazine covers. He had been called a visionary, a disruptor, a genius. And his son was alive because of a woman he had never bothered to see. He stood there for a long time. He did not speak. He did not approach her. He did not do anything except stand there and watch and feel something open up inside his chest that he did not have a word for, something between shame and gratitude and awe and the terrible, humbling realization that the most important person in his son's life had been invisible to him for a long time. Then he turned around and he walked away. It was not the right time. He did not have the right words. He did not know what to say or how to say it or whether anything he could say would be enough. But everything had changed. Everything. Bennett Fairfax knew the truth now. But knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it are very different things. And what he chose to do next would test whether gratitude from a billionaire is a gift or a trap. Bennett did not sleep that night. He went home to his penthouse overlooking the lake and sat in the dark and thought about a woman on her knees. The next morning he called Dr. Nkosi. His voice was different this time, quieter, stripped of the urgency and the entitlement that had defined their last conversation. I know who the donor is. Silence on the other end. I did not hack anything. I did not bribe anyone. I overheard two nurses talking. They did not know I was there. Her name is Amina. She is a CNA in your hospital. Dr. Nkosi exhaled slowly. Mr. Fairfax, I need you to understand something. She does not know. She does not know it is your son. She does not know whose blood she has been giving. She comes in regularly and donates and goes back to work and never asks a single question. I know, Bennett said. I watched her last night. She was cleaning a floor. There was a long pause. Then Dr. Nkosi spoke, and her voice carried a weight Bennett had not heard before. There are things you should know about her. Things I can share, because they are not medical records, and because, frankly, you need to understand who this woman is before you decide what to do next. She told him, not the medical details, not the donor file, but the things anyone at the hospital could have told him if he had ever bothered to ask. That Amina had been a pre-med student, that she had dropped out to pay for her mother's kidney treatment, that her mother was now in end-stage renal failure and needed a transplant, that Amina worked double shifts to cover the dialysis copays, that she had been donating blood since she was a teenager, that she had donated early during the crisis against medical advice at risk to her own health because she heard there was a child who needed of negative and she could not walk past that need without stopping. She did not know it was Kai, Dr. Nkosi said quietly. She just heard a child was in trouble. That was all she needed to hear. Bennett sat in his office chair, a chair that cost thousands in a room with a view of the Chicago skyline, in a building that bore his name on the lobby wall, and he thought about a woman who earned little in a year. A woman who had given up her dream of being a doctor to save her mother. A woman who gave away her blood regularly, even though it made her sick. A woman who cleaned the floors of a hospital where his son slept and never once mentioned that she was the reason that child was alive. He thought about his company, Vitalex AI, saving children's lives with the power of AI. It was printed on business cards. It was on billboards. It was the tagline of a billion-dollar empire built on the idea that technology could solve the problems of human health. But his son's health had not been solved by technology. His son's health had been maintained by a human being with a needle in her arm and a belief that you do not get to walk past someone who is dying if you have the power to help. Bennett Fairfax had built a billion-dollar empire on the idea that technology saves lives. But his son was alive because of a woman who earned little and gave away her blood for free. Early one morning in Chicago in the cold season, the kind of cold that finds the gaps in your clothing and settles into your bones. The sky was still dark. The parking lot lights cast long yellow pools on the asphalt. Amina walked out of the hospital the same way she always did, head down, thin jacket pulled tight, bag over one shoulder, moving fast because the bus came soon, and if she missed it, she would have to wait for the next one. She did not see the man leaning against the black car near the east exit. She would not have recognized him if she had. Bennett Fairfax was not someone whose face she had ever had reason to learn. "Excuse me." Amina stopped, turned, looked at the man. Expensive coat, tired eyes, hands in his pockets. He did not look dangerous. He looked lost. Can I help you? Are you Amina Assay? She felt something tighten in her chest. When strangers know your full name, it is rarely good news. Yes. Who are you? Bennett did not answer the question. Not yet. Instead, he asked one. Why do you do it? Amina blinked. Do what? Donate blood regularly for a long time. Why? The tightness in her chest turned to ice. How do you know about that? Please. Bennett's voice was quiet, almost careful, like a man handling something fragile. I am not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand. Why do you do it? Amina studied his face. She was good at reading people. You learn that when you spend your nights caring for children who cannot tell you what hurts. This man was not threatening. He was something else. He was barely holding himself together. Because I can, she said simply. I have a rare blood type, AB negative. There are not many of us and people die when the supply runs out. So, I show up. That is all, that is all? Bennett repeated. That is all? He was quiet for a moment. Steam from his breath rose and disappeared. My name is Bennett Fairfax. I have a son named Kai. He is young. He has been a patient at this hospital for a long time. He has a condition that destroys his red blood cells. Without regular transfusions, he dies. And the only blood type that matches his is OV negative. Amina felt the ground shift under her feet. Not physically, but something inside her moved. Something she could not name yet. For a long time, Bennett continued. One person has been keeping my son alive. One donor, the same person regularly. Anonymous, consistent, never miss once. The hospital would not tell me who. They could not. Donor confidentiality. He looked at her. It is you, Amina. You are the one. The parking lot was very quiet. A car passed on the street. Somewhere a bird called out in the dark. Amina stood perfectly still. Your son, she said. What room is he in? 714. 7th floor. VIP wing. The room with the rocket ship night light. She felt something crack open inside her chest. Not break, crack open. The way a seed cracks when something inside it starts to grow. Kai, she whispered. You know him. I clean his room on the night shift. He cannot sleep sometimes. I tell him stories. Bennett's face changed. Something behind his eyes collapsed. He talks about a blood lady, Amina said, and her voice was shaking now. He calls the blood bag the blood lady. He drew me a picture once. A stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He said the blood lady comes every month and makes him feel better. She looked at Bennett. Her eyes were wet. The blood lady. That is me. I am the blood lady. Bennett nodded. He could not speak. Amina pressed her hand against her mouth. She stood there in a hospital parking lot in the cold and felt a long time of anonymous giving suddenly become real. Not a bag of blood in a cooler. Not a number in a database. A child. A specific child. A boy with dark eyes and a rocket ship nightlight who could not sleep in the dark and called her the story lady and drew pictures of someone he had never met who kept him alive. And that someone was her. Had always been her. I did not save your son, Mr. Fairfax. Amina said it through tears. I just gave blood. Anyone with OV negative could have done the same, but they did not. Bennett's voice broke. For a long time, nobody else showed up. Only you. He stepped forward, and then Bennett Fairfax, a man worth billions, a man whose name was on buildings and magazine covers and the sides of hospital wings, did something that shocked Amina into silence. He knelt down right there on the cold asphalt in his expensive coat on his knees. But he did not kneel to say thank you. I walked past you, he said. His voice was raw. Many times. I walked past you in the hallway, in the elevator, outside my son's room. Many times, and I never saw you. I never once looked at your face. I never once asked your name. You were saving my son's life and I did not even know you existed. Please stand up. Amina said. Sir, please. I am sorry, Bennett said, and he meant it in a way that went deeper than Kai. He was sorry for every invisible person he had ever walked past, every CNA whose name he had never learned, every cleaner whose cart he had stepped around without a glance. He was sorry for years of not seeing. Amina reached down and took his arm gently. The way she would lift a patient, the way she would comfort a child. She helped him stand. They stood there, two people from different worlds in a parking lot in the cold, both crying, neither speaking, because sometimes there are no words big enough for what passes between people when one of them finally sees the other for the first time. Bennett collected himself first, wiped his face, cleared his throat, and started talking in the way men like him talk when they want to fix things. I want to help you. I want to pay for your mother's transplant. I want to set up a fund. I want to get you back into medical school. Whatever you need, name it. I will make it happen today. Amina looked at him, and for the first time in this conversation, her eyes were not sad. They were sharp. No, Bennett blinked. No, I do not want your money, Mr. Fairfax. He stared at her. This was not a response he had encountered before. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. Every problem could be solved with the right number of zeros. I am offering you everything you need, he said carefully. Your mother's surgery, your education, a better life, and I am saying no. Amina's voice was steady. If I accept money for blood, it stops being a gift. It becomes a transaction. And my mother taught me that blood is sacred, not for sale, not to you, not to anyone. Bennett opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then what do you want? Because I have to do something. I cannot just walk away from this and pretend you are not the reason my son is alive. Amina was quiet for a moment. She looked at the hospital behind her, at the building she entered every night and left every morning, at the place where she mopped floors and changed sheets and held children's hands and was never once seen by the people who ran it. You want to thank me, she said. Then change how your hospital treats people like me. Not just me. Every CNA, every aide, every transporter, every person who cleans up after your doctors and empties the trash and brings the meals and holds the hands and never gets a thank you, never gets a living wage, never gets seen. She met his eyes. You built a company that saves children with technology. That is wonderful. But there are people in this building right now saving children with their bare hands for little pay, and nobody knows their names. You want to do something. Start there. Bennett stood in the cold, looking at a woman who had just turned down more money than she would make in a lifetime. A woman who did not want his gratitude. She wanted justice. Not for herself, for everyone like her. And for the first time in a very long time, Bennett Fairfax felt small, not in a bad way, in the way you feel small when you stand in front of something bigger than yourself and realize you have a lot of growing to do. Amina did not want Bennett's money, but what Bennett did with her words would change a lot more than just one hospital. This is the moment everything comes full circle. If you are not subscribed yet, you are going to want to be here for what happens next. Bennett brought Amina to the 7th floor the next afternoon. She had changed out of her scrubs, put on the nicest clothes she owned, which was a sweater her mother had given her, and a pair of clean jeans. She felt out of place in the VIP wing. She always did, but today was different. Today she was not here to clean. Bennett opened the door to room 714. Kai was sitting up in bed drawing. His color was good today. The last transfusion was holding. He looked up when the door opened, and his face lit up the way only a young child's face can light up. Miss Amina, you're here in the daytime, He said it like it was the most remarkable thing in the world, because to him Amina existed only at night. She was the woman who appeared in the dark with a cleaning cart and stories about the ocean. "Hi, Kai." Amina's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "How are you feeling today?" "Better." The blood lady came again. She looked at the forepull, at the empty bag, at the tubing that had carried her blood into this child's arm. "She always comes." Bennett stepped forward. He crouched down next to his son's bed. "Buddy, I want to tell you something. You know how you always talk about the blood lady, the person who gives you blood regularly?" Kai nodded. "She makes me strong." "That is right. She does." Bennett looked at Amina, then back at his son. "Well, the blood lady is here. She is standing right there." Kai looked at Amina, then at his father, then at Amina again. A young child's mind works differently than an adult's. There is no filter between understanding and expression, no social calculation, no hesitation. Kai looked at Amina, the woman who told him stories about fishermen and oceans, and at the empty blood bag, the invisible hero who kept him alive, and his eyes went wide. "You are the blood lady and the story lady. You are two people." Amina laughed, a short broken sound that was half laugh and half sob. "No, sweetheart, I am just one person. I just do two things." Kai stared at her with an expression of pure, unfiltered wonder, the kind of wonder that only exists before the world teaches you to be cynical. Then he opened his arms. Amina crossed the room and wrapped her arms around that small boy and held him the way she had held her mother and the way her mother had held her. Tight, present, like she was trying to pour everything she felt through her skin and into his. Bennett stood behind them. He did not make a sound, but his face was ruined, tears running freely, jaw tight, hands clenched at his sides. Not because he was sad, because he was watching something sacred, and he knew it. Kai pulled back, reached under his pillow, and pulled out a piece of paper, creased and worn from months of being slept on, and carried around and shown to every nurse who came into the room. The drawing, the blood lady, a stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He had drawn Amina long before anyone knew who she was. A child had seen her before a billionaire ever did. "This is you," Kai said, holding the drawing up to Amina. "I made it for you. I was saving it because I knew you would come one day." Amina took the drawing, held it with both hands, looked at it through tears that would not stop. A stick figure, crayon on printer paper, brown skin, big hands, a red heart. It was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given her. Bennett Fairfax went home that night and could not sleep, not because of worrying this time, because of shame, and because of a sentence that kept playing in his head like a song he could not turn off. "Change how your hospital treats people like me." He had built a billion-dollar company on the idea that systems matter more than individuals, that if you fix the system, you fix the problem. Amina had just told him the same thing in a parking lot in the cold for free. So he fixed the system. It took him weeks of meetings and phone calls and lawyers and accountants and conversations with the hospital board that ranged from polite to heated to somewhere just short of threats. But Bennett Fairfax was very good at getting things done when he decided something needed to happen. The first thing he did was fund the Invisible Heroes Initiative, a program designed specifically for CNAs, patient care aides, transporters, housekeeping staff, and every other frontline hospital worker who touched patients daily and made less than a living wage. The program had three components: a meaningful across-the-board raise for all support staff at St. Jude Children's Memorial, a professional development fund that covered certification courses, continuing education, and skills training, and an annual recognition ceremony where frontline workers were nominated by patients and families for the care they had provided. Here is something most people do not know. The United States is facing a critical shortage of CNAs. There are roughly millions of nursing assistants in the country, and the field has one of the highest turnover rates of any profession. Many leave their jobs within the first year, not because they do not care, because they cannot afford to stay. The average CNA earns low wages. In cities like Chicago, that is poverty wages, you can work full-time as a CNA and still qualify for food stamps. You can wipe down patients and change bedpans and monitor vital signs and hold a dying person's hand in the dark and still not be able to afford your own health insurance. The problem is not the workers. The problem is a system that treats them as disposable. Bennett understood that now, in a way he had not before, because Amina had not asked him to fix her life. She had asked him to fix the world she lived in. The second thing Bennett did was create the Ivanace Medical Scholarship, named after Amina's mother. Funded with a large endowment, the scholarship was open to any frontline healthcare worker, CNA, aide, transporter, technician, anyone who worked in a hospital in a support role and wanted to pursue medical education. Full tuition, full stipend, no strings attached. Bennett had not told Amina about the name. He had chosen it without asking because some things you do not need permission to honor. The third thing he did was the biggest. He redirected a portion of Vitalix research budget toward building a national rare blood type registry, a digital platform that would connect rare blood donors with patients who needed them, real-time matching, automated alerts, a system that made sure no hospital would ever run out of OV negative or any other rare type because they did not know who had it. The technology that had built Bennett's empire was finally being used to solve the problem that had almost killed his son. The launch event was held in the main auditorium of St. Jude Children's Memorial one afternoon. Bennett stood at the podium in front of many people: doctors, nurses, board members, media, staff from every level of the hospital, and in the third row, Derek Lawson, sitting with his arms crossed and his jaw tight. He had been told attendance was mandatory. He had not been told why. Bennett adjusted the microphone. "I built a company to save children with technology," he began. "My face has been on magazine covers. I have been called a visionary. I have given speeches at conferences where people paid thousands a seat to hear me talk about innovation. And months ago, my son almost died because this hospital did not have a bag of blood." He paused. "My son is alive today because of a woman who works in this building, a woman who earns little, a woman who mops floors and changes sheets and takes vital signs and cleans up after the rest of us, a woman who donated her blood regularly for a long time anonymously, without payment, without recognition, without ever knowing whose life she was saving. She did it because her mother taught her that giving blood is not charity. It is responsibility." He looked at Amina. She was sitting near the back. She had not wanted to come. Dr. Nkosi had convinced her. "I walked past that woman many times," Bennett continued. "Many times, and I never saw her. And I do not think I am the only one. I think this hospital, like every hospital in this country, is full of people we walk past without seeing. People who hold the whole system together and get paid the least for it. People who are the first to touch a patient and the last to be thanked." He turned to Derek Lawson. "Today that changes." Derek sat very still. His face revealed nothing, but his crossed arms slowly fell to his sides. Bennett announced the Invisible Heroes Initiative. He announced the Ivanace Scholarship. He announced the Rare Blood Registry. And when he was done, the auditorium stood, not for him, for the idea that the people who are seen the least might matter the most. Amina did not stand. She sat in her chair in the back row and wept quietly, not because she was being honored, because her mother's name was on a scholarship, because the words she had spoken in a parking lot in the cold had turned into something real, because for the first time in her life, someone with power had listened to someone without it. 1 year later, Amina walked into a lecture hall at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Medicine. She was carrying a backpack that still had a hospital ID clipped to the front pocket. She was wearing the same shoes she had worn on the night shift because she had not had time to buy new ones, and she was surrounded by students who had never mopped a floor or drawn blood from their own arm or sat with a dying child in the dark. She sat down in the third row, opened her notebook, looked at the whiteboard where the professor had written the first lesson of the semester. It felt like a dream, the kind you do not believe even while you are living it. The Ivanace scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, a monthly stipend. Amina had applied without knowing who funded it. The letter had come from the hospital's education office. Formal, official, no mention of Bennett Fairfax. She had read it many times before she believed it. And there was something else. Her mother was alive. Gloria had received a kidney transplant months ago. The donor was anonymous. The costs had been covered through a hospital charity fund that Amina had never heard of before. Dr. Nkosi had helped coordinate the paperwork. Everything had been clean, official, no strings, no names. Amina suspected. She could not prove it, but she knew how anonymity worked better than most. She had spent a long time giving anonymously, and now for the first time she was on the other side of that wall, receiving without knowing, grateful without a name to direct the gratitude toward. The symmetry was not lost on her. She sat in that lecture hall surrounded by students young enough to be the children she had cared for, and she looked at her hands. The same hands, the ones that had scrubbed hospital floors, the ones that had held the arms of sick children in the dark, the ones that had opened their veins many times so a stranger's blood could keep a small boy alive. Those hands were holding a medical textbook now. The same hands, different purpose, same person. Her mother's voice moved through her quiet and steady the way it always did when Amina needed to remember who she was. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. Amina picked up her pen and she began to write. Years later, on a bright Saturday morning in June, Amina Assay walked across the stage. She wore a black gown and a hood trimmed in green, the color of the medical school. Her name was called by the dean of the University of Illinois Chicago College of Medicine, and when she stood, the audience erupted. Not the polite applause that greets every graduate, something louder, something that came from the gut, because the people in that auditorium knew her story. Not all of them, but enough. The classmates who had studied with her, the professors who had watched her outperform students a decade younger, the hospital staff who had come to see one of their own cross the line from the lowest rung to the highest. She walked to the podium, received her degree, Doctor of Medicine, specialization in pediatric hematology, the study of blood diseases in children, the exact field that had defined Kai's life and in a way she could not have predicted her own. She turned to face the audience. In the fifth row, Kai Fairfax sat between his father and Gloria Assay. Kai was older now, tall for his age, healthy. His eye had gone into sustained remission thanks to a combination therapy developed by Vitalik IS Research Division. Informed in part by clinical observations Amina had contributed during her residency rotations, the disease that had nearly killed him had become the bridge that connected his treatment to her training. Gloria sat in a wheelchair. She was older now, thin, but her eyes were bright and her back was straight, and she was wearing the same gold earrings she had worn the day she first took Amina to donate blood in Accra. Bennett sat with his hands folded in his lap. He was not crying yet. He would be. Amina looked down at the audience from the stage. Hundreds of faces, but she found the one she was looking for. Kai was holding something up, a piece of paper, creased, yellowed at the edges, torn in one corner from years of handling. The drawing, the blood lady, a stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He had kept it. For years, he had kept it, and now he was holding it up in an auditorium full of people smiling at the woman who had once been his midnight storyteller and his anonymous lifeline, and who was now officially a doctor. Amina looked at that drawing and felt everything at once. Every night shift, every pint of blood, every floor she had mopped, every time she had been looked through like glass, every time she had sat with a scared child in the dark and told stories about oceans and fishermen and kindness. It all came down to this. A piece of paper in a boy's hand. She did not speak. She did not need to. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had mopped floors and donated blood and comforted a scared little boy in the dark. Now they would hold a stethoscope, but they would never forget where they had been. Thank you for following Amina's incredible journey from invisible CNA to the doctor who helped save the boy she had been saving all along. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the people you walk past every day, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Here is the truth. There are people in your life right now who are giving everything they have and getting nothing in return. People who show up every day, do the hardest work, and never get seen. They are in your hospitals, your schools, your offices, your neighborhoods. They are mopping floors and driving buses and stocking shelves and caring for your parents and your children. And most of us walk right past them. Amina's mother used to say something that I want you to carry with you. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. So, I have two questions for you. When was the last time you donated blood? And when was the last time you truly saw someone you walk past every day? Leave your answer in the comments. Share this video with someone who gives without being seen. And if you or someone you know has a rare blood type, please consider becoming a regular donor. You might be the only match for a child who is counting on you. Until next time, stay kind, stay giving, and never underestimate the power of what flows through your veins. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one.